Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. And we're getting off to a little bit of a weird start this morning, entirely our fault. There was a miscommunication with regards to whether we were starting at 1 or 7. And so I wasn't here at 1, but I'm here now. And we're going to have a great chat with Lexie and Sarah. As always, we have a busy event schedule this week, lots of authors that we'll be in discussion with. So make sure to check out the schedule at murderbooks.com. And we also have all of our Facebook events listed, all of the events listed on Facebook through the end of August. We're going to get our September events loaded up there today. As always, I've put a link in the comments if you want more information about either author or to order their books. That link is there in the comments. And if you have any questions, don't be shy. Put those in the live chat on YouTube or in the comments on Facebook, and we'll get to them in just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start with bringing in Lexie Elliott. Hi, Lexie. How are you today?
Hi, McKenna. I'm well. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for your patience and understanding with this timing mistake. Out of hundreds and hundreds of events now that we've done, I guess it was bound to happen. I'm sorry that it landed on you, but we're going to make the most out of it. Let me go ahead and get you introduced really quickly. Lexie Elliott grew up in Scotland at the foot of the Highlands. She graduated from Oxford University, where she obtained a doctorate in theoretical physics. A keen sportswoman, she works in fund management in London, where she lives with her husband and 2 sons. The rest of her time is spent writing or thinking about writing and juggling family life and sport. And she's here today to tell us about her brand new book, How to Kill Your Best Friend. I can't wait to hear more about it.
Thank you. I'm going to do a little update to that, which is that I resigned from my fund management job, so I am now a full-time author.
Oh, excellent. I'm sorry. Sometimes we have very current bios, and sometimes they're not as. So
no, it's so recent that I haven't updated anything. Okay. So it is that one's on me.
Okay, I was like, normally we have pretty updated bios. Well, congratulations on the full-time writing. That's fantastic. All right, we are also joined by Sarah Zachrich Jeng. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm really happy for Lexie.
Now, you're here all to talk about the other me also. I'm going to go ahead and get you introduced. So Sarah grew up in Michigan and always had a flair for the morbid and mysterious. For her dad's 35th birthday, she wrote a story entitled The Man Who Died at 35. She had a brief career as an aspiring rock star before she came to her senses and went back to school to become a web developer. Sarah lives in Florida with her family and an extremely hyper rescue dog. The Other Me is her first novel. Now, since I haven't spoken with either of you, I'm going to take this opportunity. I know that Lexie's book is the brand new book, but if we could hear about both of your books, that would be great. Why don't we start with you, Lexie? Give us, I always like to say an elevator pitch, but you can stop on as many floors as you want.
Okay, so How to Kill Your Best Friend is my third novel. It's a psychological thriller, and it's set around a group of friends who reunite on a remote island for the memorial of one of their group who has unfortunately drowned. That seems very strange to the friends because they were all great swimmers. In fact, swimming at university was what drew them all together. And it's told through the eyes of 2 particular girls. So that's Georgie and Bronwyn, who as soon as they get on the island, start to see that there are funny things happening, start to question what could have happened to their friend Lissa, who drowned, and things unfold from there.
Excellent. And we've been big fans of your books at Murder by the Book. So I'm excited to sit back and enjoy you guys talking today. Sarah, why don't you tell us about your book as well?
So The Other Me is a speculative thriller, and it's about an artist named Kelly who lives in Chicago. And on her 29th birthday, she is at her friend's opening when she walks through a door and suddenly finds herself in a completely different life. She's in her hometown in Michigan, and instead of going to art school, she stayed home and married a guy from her high school. So she's stumbled into this different life. And she pretty early on, as soon as she gets over her initial shock, she realizes that she can remember things from both of her lives, the one in Chicago and the one in Michigan. So she has to figure out what happened, why it happened, what caused it, and if she can reverse it.
Awesome. So both of you obviously write suspense, shall we say. I'm going to go ahead and ask the well overdone, what is your process? Plotting, pantsing? How do you make sure that the books stay suspenseful throughout? Lexie?
Well, I think my process has developed. This is my third novel, obviously, so I've had a chance to refine that, and it's developed in part because your publisher actually wants to know what you're going to write about, so they do like to see an outline that gives them an idea of where you're going with it, and clearly the book will deviate from that outline as you're writing it, but I have found that is really helpful to me, in fact. But I think in terms of pace, which I think perhaps is what you're asking about too, I think you have a feel for that. You can clean it up a bit in a second or a third draft if you're not quite on the money with the pace. But my rule of thumb is generally that if I'm getting bored writing, then somebody's going to be getting bored reading. So I'd better do something. Something had better happen.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, how about you, Sarah?
So I do outline, but the outline changes a lot in the course of writing. I tend to be an overwriter. Like I'll just start writing to get a certain word count, and then I'll just blow right past that. So I have to go back and really fix the pacing in the second draft. Like the first draft is where I kind of get the voice and figure out what basic things are happening. And then the second draft is where I really get the pace and get the pieces together.
Okay. So Lexie, was there some type of real life inspiration for this book?
The initial inspiration was, in fact, just the title. It came to me when I was on vacation, back when, it was easier to be on vacation. Although, to be fair, this is not my home. I'm on vacation right now. But I came up with How to Kill Your Best Friend and kind of thought, why would you even want to do that? And I guess the location I was in at that point really bled into that, with the idea of a remote island, a luxury resort on a remote island, and then I have been a swimmer all my life, a competitive swimmer in my teens and my university years, so that clearly influenced the friendship group that I started thinking about. I think because when you have something set on an island, you're going to be thinking about the ocean, and for me that means swimming, and it all started to unfold from there. But yeah, in terms of inspiration or even research, I didn't have to research open water swimming. I mean, I've done a lot of it, and in fact I swam the channel in 2007, the channel between England and France, so I have some experience.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Thank you.
How about Sarah? How about you, Sarah? Have you drawn inspiration from anything in real life for your book?
I have. I mean, certain things. Like at the time that I had the idea for The Other Me, I was going through a lot of life changes. I had a young child. I'd switched jobs. So I was kind of switching from that mindset of being in your 20s and being in your extended adolescence to being a real adult in your 30s. And I was kind of feeling a lack of creative outlet. So I started writing, and I also wanted to have a character who kind of defines herself through her creativity, because I had been a musician and I hadn't been doing that for a while. So I'd kind of been feeling the loss of that, and I wanted to put that into my main character. Like, she identifies herself through her art, and then that gets taken away. So how does she construct her identity after that?
Excellent.
I want to hear about Sarah being a rock star.
I kind of do too. I mean, I found the English Channel thing so impressive. Sarah, tell us about your music background.
So when I was in my 20s, I played in rock bands. It never really got past the local stage. It was like something fun that I did with my friends. But I did it for probably a good like 10 years. So that was basically my whole 20s, and I was probably in, at least 6 or 8 bands through the years. So I played.
What did you play?
So I played keyboards in a hardcore band as my first band. And then after that, I moved on to bass guitar, and then I played drums for a while. And that was probably my main instrument for a long time.
Very impressive.
That is super fun. All right, so we talked a little bit about kind of where your ideas come from, and also, your process. But one day you sit down and you have writer's block. What do you do, Lexie?
Yeah, I've typically just been so busy that I can't allow myself to have it. So the way I get around it is I will jump ahead and write a different section and come back to it. So if I know there's a scene further on that needs to be written and is definitely going to be there, I might just move on to that and then backfill. And so it hasn't been a big problem. I do find there are times when it's a bit stickier getting going. There's nothing like a deadline, though, to really, really push you on.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
How about you, Sarah?
Lexie's right about the deadline point. So yeah, as far as writer's block goes, I don't know if I've ever been in a space where I can't write at all. I've definitely been in a space where it's not as inspired or easy to get the words out. And sometimes, you sit down and it's just not happening. So I'll, research something or I'll go back and try to edit a scene or something. I mean, there's always something to do when you're writing a book, even if you're not feeling inspired.
So you just mentioned research. That leads into my next question. So what is your favorite tidbit that you got doing research for your books? Are there any interesting stories you came across? And you know what, Lexie, why don't we start with Sarah this time, since she brought up the topic of research?
I don't know if I remember any specific tidbits, especially since some of it's a little bit spoilery. But it was really interesting to learn about both the art world and startup culture, because they're so different, but at the same time, they're almost similar in how seriously people take themselves in both of them. So that was really fun to learn about. And I also learned some things about science, and, scientists like to they play around a lot. They have fun. So I got to witness that a little bit through the videos and the articles that I read about my topics.
Nice. How about you, Lexie?
Well, my book is called How to Kill Your Best Friend, and it does have these method sections where somebody is considering how they might do a murder. So those were quite a lot of fun, although I was slightly concerned if anybody actually went in and checked my internet history, what they might think I was doing. But I did discover, for example, that it's not actually that easy to kill someone by, for example, dropping a hairdryer into a bathtub or something like that. But myself and my 2 children, Cameron and Zachrich, we had a lot of fun after school conversations where they would come back home and say, "I've had another idea. How about this?"
That's
so far,
funny.
they seem to be, relatively sane human beings, but we'll see.
All right. So
you're a fun mom.
Yeah, that is a fun mom move. So you said no time for writer's block, but do you have oh my gosh, what's the routine? Do you have a specific routine? So like you put on certain music or no music, or you have a special beverage, or is it just kind of catch as catch can with the writing? Lexie?
Before COVID hit, I very definitely had a routine. I had a place where I would go and write on the days that I was writing. rather than working in the city. And then COVID changed all that. And I suddenly had to work through, 2 kids doing online schooling at home and no time to myself and just catching any moment. And I think I'm much better now at being flexible with that. But one of the things I do around music is I can't cope with anything that has lyrics. So I tend to play movie soundtracks. The Piano soundtrack by Michael Nyman, I love that one. The soundtrack to Last of the Mohicans is wonderful. And those kind of things tend to work for me, I think, because if you think about a movie, the soundtrack is supposed to give you the space to enjoy a different medium while it's going on. And I think it gives me the headspace to do the writing without intruding.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. I've heard other authors say they like movie soundtracks as well. I think also if you, I can't listen to music when I read. And I'm a formerly trained musician. I have a master's in violin performance. And so I find myself, if it's lyrics, that's terrible. Like I really can't do it. But even if it's just like a melody that I find myself thinking on, then I'm lost to the book. So I have to have complete silence. But movie soundtracks or something like that, almost you can get away with because there's so many lulls and quiet moments that it doesn't enter your brain quite as much. How about you, Sarah?
I definitely have a routine, and I've always had to kind of fit writing around the other things in my life, so that hasn't changed with COVID. I mean, I get up at 5 a.m. and write until it's time to get my kid up for school. So that's what I've that's what I've been doing for like 5 years. And other than that, as far as music goes, I love the Piano soundtrack, by the way. It's been one of my favorites for a long time. But I don't write to music at all. I need silence. I do make playlists for my works in progress just to kind of get the mood right. And those songs usually do have lyrics that kind of get either the voice of the character or the mood that I'm trying to create. So I create those and then I listen to them when I'm not writing.
Yeah, sure. That makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's talk about your influences. What books did you read during your formative years, or, what books stand out from your childhood or later on? And was there a particular book that made you think you wanted to be a writer? Lexie?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer. I think as soon as I understood that books didn't, spontaneously come into being and somebody actually wrote them, that was absolutely what I wanted to do. But, then you grow up a bit and you realize it's terribly hard to get paid. And I quite wanted to pay the rent and eat and all those kind of things. So it was something I was doing on the side. In terms of formative, influential books, I would say that Margaret Atwood was really, really influential for me. I think her book Wilderness Tips, the collection of short stories, really opened my eyes to what you can do within the short story form. And for a long time I wrote nothing but short stories, and in fact I won a competition with a short story, and it was that which gave me the confidence to think, okay, well, maybe I can move on and actually do a novel now. So that was really influential. I read a lot of sci-fi, read a lot of fantasy. And I think that's quite important from the point of view of thinking about world building. And I would actually quite like to write in that genre at some point. But I've been thinking lately, I was writing a piece on thrillers set in exotic locations. And I remembered that as a teenager, I read all of MMK's Death in series, which are, the murder mysteries set in different places, like Death in Zanzibar, Death in Berlin. And, that kind of thing I'd forgotten. But, I must have read those 3 or 4 times each as a teenager. So I clearly loved that genre. And maybe that was more influential on me than I'd actually remembered.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful series. I wish they were still in print to sell, because we used to love hand selling those books, especially to customers who come in. We get it all the time, people who come in and say, I'm going on vacation to fill in the blank place and I want to read about it either on the trip or before I go. And so those were great because you could pick it, whichever one was set there. Okay, Sarah, how about you? What were some of your major reads, and when did you want to be a writer?
Well, I also wanted to be a writer very early on. I wrote stories when I was a kid. My dad had a typewriter that he let me use that I would type on in the middle of the night, probably drove them insane. But I used to read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi and sort of supernatural fiction growing up. I read a lot of Stephen King. And I loved, his voice and the way he tells a story. I think I learned a lot about storytelling and voice from him. And Margaret Atwood is a big favorite of mine as well. Just the way she writes, women who are angry and who are sort of not what society expects. Like The Handmaid's Tale, but also Alias Grace was one of my big favorites as far as voice and writing style. And more recently, Lauren Bukes. I love the way she weaves in supernatural or fantastical elements. I love books that do that, like that bring in impossible things into like the mundane world. And it's the world building in that to make it seem normal is very impressive to me.
Right. Where you start reading and I typically don't read fantasy, but it's such a compliment to an author who brings in those elements. If I can start reading it and I'm hooked and I just believe their world, it's a great thing.
Snag at all.
Like Shining Girls by Lauren Bukes. Such a great job. Do you have a word or phrase that you overuse that your editor's always pointing out? Or in real life, I guess, not just your books.
Just is a big one.
Just.
And emails too.
Oh, I can't think. My kids would probably say no, me saying no is probably a big one. No, I can't think of anything. On writing, not really.
Wow, great. It's funny. Some people say they have like one particular word in like their new book. Like it changes per book, and they've got this one word they're stuck on. If you got to have dinner with anyone in the literary world, fictional or an author, who would it be? Living or dead?
Whew.
I normally limit it to a character or to an author, but no matter which one I choose, the person I'm talking to wants the other. So I'm going to give you your choice. It can be fictional or it can be an author.
I probably would choose Margaret Atwood. I think it would be really fascinating to meet her.
Yeah. You, Sarah?
I would love to talk to her too, but I don't know about dinner, but I would really like to go out like dancing with Lydia Bennett.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That was really fun.
She would be fun. I mean, she would be a nightmare, but she would be fun.
Excellent.
Somebody once asked me, a different take on that question was, which fictional character would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with? And I said Katniss Everdeen, because I'm absolutely sure she'd get me out.
Yeah, you wouldn't be stuck long.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now? Can you tell us anything about what you're working on?
I'm working on book 4, which is as yet untitled. I can't say very much about it because I'm still kind of in the, I'm still formulating it, but it's partly set in Oxford, it's partly set in the French Alps, and clearly there are deaths, clearly.
How about you, Sarah?
So I'm working on book 2, which is another speculative suspense novel. And this one's more about female friendship. It's about 2 women who were friends in college who parted ways. Their friendship ended very badly, and what happens when their lives intersect again. So
it could be How to Kill Your Best Friend.
How to take your best friend's life.
There you go. Okay. All right. Fair enough. We do have a couple questions from the crowd. I'm going to interject those really quickly, and then we can keep talking after that if we want. So Gail was wondering, how is your best friend taken to your new book, Lexie?
There was an interesting copy where I said, that my publisher for the first time ever really liked my title, and she said, "Oh, what's the title?" And I said, "How to Kill Your Best Friend," and she went. And I really wish I had actually had a video camera on it because it was hysterical. But she's in the dedications page, so I think she knows she's safe.
Oh, fair enough. And a follow-up question, or also from Gail for you, Lexie. What gave you the courage to write full time?
I think that it was just a natural change in circumstances, in the sense that things were moving around at the firm I was working at. There were a couple of people leaving that, and I felt less tied to the firm once they'd gone. And my kids are growing up, and I feel like maybe this is the time to spend a bit more time with them rather than, having 3 days in the office where I'm racing home to try and get home for 7:30, as opposed to, actually being able to be around when they come home from school and things. So it just feels like this is the right time to do it. And, and I guess also, I'm working on my 4th novel now. It feels kind of like I'm a proper author, and it takes a while to feel like you're a proper author, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Sarah, suspense writer or rocker, which do you prefer?
Well, I get more sleep as a writer, so it's probably a healthier lifestyle all around. I definitely like, I wrote when I was a kid, and I feel like I've come back to that naturally. I feel like it's kind of what I was always meant to do.
Excellent.
She shouldn't have to choose. She can be both if she wants.
That's correct. That's correct.
I still play the drums. Yeah.
That's great. There we go. Do you have a favorite motive that you find yourself exploring in your books? Either of you. If someone has an answer, they can jump in. I know it's a little bit of a trickier question.
I guess I'm interested in how people might, how people's desires might blind them to other people and sort of reduce their empathy for other people, and what they might do to get what they want that might be outside of their value system, but they do it anyway.
They can justify it because they kind of dehumanize those people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Lexie?
Yeah. I think, with each book, you're maybe looking at something a little bit different. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's one that I would go back to as such. I think I'm always trying to explore relationships between groups of people, or for example, The Missing Years, there's a strong sibling relationship aspect to it. So it's relationships and what drives the kind of ebb and flow of those, and the petty resentments that can blow up into something larger. Those are often the starting point for me, but that doesn't mean that the ultimate motive will necessarily be the same. It will change from book to book.
Sure. So this whole lockdown's been hard, right? Pandemic's been hard. How did you find yourselves affected by that with regards to writing or reading? And are you kind of back on track now?
I was very fortunate that before the first lockdown hit, I'd done the bulk of the work on How to Kill Your Best Friend, and was really into sort of copy editing and such, because I think I would have found it very difficult at that point to be in kind of first draft writing.
Creatively.
Yeah, and editing is a different skill set, and one which lends itself a little better to doing on the fly and a snatched hour here or there or so on. I feel, yeah, I'm back now to where I want to be. There was a period where I just thought, thank goodness that I am not having to come up with an idea for a new book, because I think the uncertainty of what we were all living through was very draining, and it was very difficult to find the energy to be creative.
How about you, Sarah?
Well, I had also written The Other Me before the pandemic. We were going on submission in the early months of lockdown, actually. But I also didn't have to do like a first draft right in the thick of it. So I did get pretty distracted for a while. Luckily, it was a lot of edits and copy edits rather than having to draft. But I did have to come up with sort of pitches for book 2. And it was interesting trying to come up with things that didn't involve a pandemic, because one of my ideas did, and that was immediately shot down. But yeah, I was lucky in that writing was more of an escape than a demand for me at that time. So it really helped me kind of compartmentalize things. Instead of, just doom scrolling all the time, I had to be creative sometimes. And that was, it was comforting to me.
Have you been playing gigs too, or is that starting back up at all?
No, I don't really play in bands anymore because it's just too many late nights. But yeah, I'm in Florida, so I assume things are open, but I haven't been.
Girl, we're in Texas too. It's the wild west. Okay. Oh gosh, I had another question. Where did it go? So people always want to know, what have you read and loved recently? Are there any other books, like books by other authors you'd like to give a shout out to? Let's start with you, Lexie.
Well, obviously the first shout out is The Other Me by Sarah, which was excellent, and I really loved it. It's a really interesting premise, so you should definitely pick that up. I read recently Erica Ferenczik's new one, Girl in Ice, which I don't think is out yet. I got it on advance, and it's very, very good and really interesting and smart. So that's a fun one to get hold of as well. And then the book that's, absolutely not in the thriller genre that blew me away was Susanna Clarke's Piranesi, which is on the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And the prize giving's been delayed, so we don't yet know who's won. And I do hope it's her, because I really adored that book. It's so interesting, and it's generous of heart, and just so creative and enthralling and different, very, very different. You can read the blurb for it and still have absolutely no idea what you're going to get. And that's kind of interesting. How often does that happen?
Yeah. I love her writing. I read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but I haven't gotten around to Piranesi. So I have it. I have a lovely little signed copy, but I just haven't gotten to it. How about you, Sarah?
So How to Kill Your Best Friend is amazing. I highly recommend it. Love the friend group dynamics and just the twists and turns there. I also just recently read My Sweet Girl by Amanda Jayatissa. It's not coming out until September, but it's really good. It's she's a Sri Lankan author, and it's interesting. Like, it brings in the main character as a Sri Lankan immigrant, and it brings in her perspective as an adoptee, and her voice is just fierce. It's amazing. And one book that was much more gentle, which we all need in the pandemic, is The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson, which I think is coming out at the end of this month. And it was just it made me cry, and it was very full of heart. So
yeah. I actually the Sri Lankan book is like next up on my to read. I hear amazing things about it. It's on my radar. And I also have Last Chance Library, the galley downloaded, because there was a book that came out last year, the Jane Austen Society, that I felt was like the perfect, like everyone just entered lockdown book. And it's about all these people who get together, all these strangers in a small town who get together to save Jane Austen's home. And it just was so full of heart and such a lovely escape that it was the perfect like respite from the world. So this Last Chance Library sounds good too. My last question for you both, just because it's nosy and I find it interesting. Do you ever dream about your characters? Let's start with you, Lexie.
Do I ever dream about my characters? Not when I'm properly asleep. I mean, I daydream about my characters, and they do different things. You know, they're living, breathing people in my head. They walk around, they do their own thing, and they drag the narrative in different places. And that's a good thing. If they're not doing that, then maybe they just aren't as real as they should be. But I don't remember having a proper nighttime dream with any of my characters.
Do you miss them when you're done with that book and you're moving on?
Yeah, some of them, definitely some of them more than others, but they're still there. They're still inside me, you know, they'll never be gone.
Absolutely. How about you, Sarah?
I also daydream about my work in progress when I'm going to sleep, just kind of work out plot problems and what have you, but I don't really dream about them. I do get ideas from dreams sometimes, and those can be either logical or not, and they might come to something or they might not, but that's about the extent of that.
Fair enough. I'm always fascinated by like the subconscious of the writer, you know, because I hear frequently that people, you know, some people do dream about them, but other people mention that kind of like the half awake hours in the morning, like, you know, you're laying there and then that's when like a plot point will get figured out. And so I find it interesting.
In the bath, I always think in the bath for me is when plot points get sorted out. In the bath or out running.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, well, I think we've done our jobs for the afternoon. Again, to both of you, apologies for my running late and for the time confusion. Of course, if you've tuned in late as a viewer, this will be available on YouTube. It's available on Facebook as soon as I hit end broadcast. You can go back and watch it from the beginning. And YouTube takes just a little bit to process it, but you can start it from the beginning on there as soon as they process the live video. I want to mention again that if you're interested in more from the authors or to order books, I've got a link in the comments. Lexie's new book is How to Kill Your Best Friend, and Sarah's is The Other Me. And we have all the information right there. Thanks to everyone for watching, and thank you both for being here this afternoon. I really do appreciate it, and I'm going to sign us off now.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you both. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.